Welcome back to the unit circle. Today we finish the special angles of the unit circle, quadrant 4. We start with a circle with radius r equal to 1. And we say that it is centered on the origin, the x and the y axis, right? And we say that our general angles in the first quadrant, quadrant 1, will guide us to the general angles in quadrant 4. Quadrant 1 was bisected by a 45-degree angle in radians that's known as pi over 4. If you add another pi over 4 to pi over 4, you get 2 pi over 4, which is equivalent to pi over 2. But if instead you divided pi over 2, 90 degrees, into 3 equal parts, you would get the special angles pi over 6 and pi over 3. Now, that's all review, and we use that as our way of deriving the 3 special angles in quadrant 4. We start with pi over 6, and we say that instead of adding pi over 2 or pi, or we will add instead a pi over 2 and a pi, which is equivalent to 3 pi over 2. The problem with adding 3 pi over 2 to sixths is that they have different denominators, so we have to convert them. Pi over 6 doesn't have to be converted, but 3 pi over 2 we convert into sixths by multiplying the numerator and denominator by 3, giving us 9 pi over 6. Now they have the same denominator. We can add them and we get 10 pi over 6, which can be further simplified into 5 pi over 3. That is going to be our first angle in quadrant 4, right? If we bisected the 90-degree angle formed by positive x and negative y, we will leave that angle unnamed for now, but if we divided it into 3 equal parts, the first one is called 5 pi over 3, and that's 30 degrees beyond the 270, right? So that is equivalent to 300 degrees. 5 pi over 3 is 300 degrees. If instead we started with pi over 4 and we added 3 pi over 2 to that, we still would have to convert into fourths. So we start with pi over 4 and we add 6 pi over 4, multiplying numerator and denominator by 2, and then we have 7 pi over 4. So the second angle here is 7 pi over 4, and that is equivalent to 315 degrees. The last one starts with pi over 3 in the first quadrant, and we're going to add 270 degrees in radians. We know that as 3 pi over 2. So the problem here is that the denominators 3 and 2 have to both be converted into sixths, the least common multiple, least common denominator. So pi over 3, the first one, converted into 6. We multiply both top and bottom by 2, and we get 2 pi over 6. 3 pi over 2, we convert that by multiplying both numerator and denominator by 3, and we get, excuse me, this is sixths now. So this is going to be 9 pi over 6. Summing this together, we get 11 pi over 6, and that's this angle here, which is equivalent to 330 degrees. Right? We know that once we get to 330, we add another 30 degrees to that, and we get to 360, which would be a full rev around the circle. And now we have all of our special angles for each quadrant defined. Thank you for watching.